Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745, and I'm taking a look at Black Ice for Hearts of Iron 4, the current standard version. And I've got a request to look at how our tank building is going. So, we currently have 106 light tanks and 58 tankettes, so not terribly well. We maybe well, when we get more factories, I think we'll see about. Oh yeah, this is what you need to do sometimes here, is just click that. No, that isn't working. Come on, display. All of our light tanks are over here? No, that can't be. Yeah, there is. I've noticed this display problems with. There we go. See, there we are. Now, just picture of the Vickers. They're using the Char B for some reason. The Matilda 1. Now this, I know what this looks like. It's different, but pretty out of date. Yeah, we need better tanks here. Okay, as soon as we can in 38, I think it is, we get to start researching better things. Okay. Halifax visits Germany. Oh, terrible Chinese picture there. Okay, as a diplomat, the new government of Neville Chamberlain. I know I did this early, but they need to do their events better so that either don't fire with Churchill or whatever. Why does the Vickers look? It's the wrong image. The Vickers tank looks very different. Yeah. And it's an out-of-date 1920s model tank anyways, but okay. As a diplomat for a new government of Neville Chamberlain, Lord Halifax visits Hermann Goering in Germany. Halifax visits Hitler, who pledges to support the British Empire. Hitler offers advice on how to deal with those in India seeking independence. Kill Gandhi, he advised, and that is not enough. Kill the other leaders too. Lord Halifax's friend Henry Cannon will report that Halifax likes all of the Nazi leaders, including Goebbels. Cannon reports that Halifax thinks the regime is absolutely fantastic. Okay, I had not heard what Cannon's saying before reading this, I'll tell you very truthfully, but I did know that Halifax is, like I say, visits Hermann Goering. Now, yeah, Gorbachev came and stayed at the Reagan Ranch, I believe it was, and definitely Putin stayed at Bush the Younger's ranch. So that definitely happened. But what Halifax goes and stays, not just is in Germany, staying either at the British Embassy or staying at some hotel or staying at the home of the British ambassador, something like that. He stays at Karen Hall, Goering's sort of country estate home. So he's staying with Goering, and like he says, he thinks the regime is absolutely fantastic and whatnot. And on the surface, in some ways, it may look that way to a visitor, without seeing the dark underside repression. I do realize that. Now, from a historical point of view, why this is important. There were 3 men in a room in 1940 as France is falling. 3 men in a room. France is falling. One of the men is Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister. The other 2 conservative politicians were Winston Churchill and because it is actually Lord Halifax, because his name isn't Halifax, it's Lord Halifax, and whatever his name is, I believe. And they're in the room to discuss, because Neville Chamberlain realizes that he's lost the confidence of Parliament, probably the King, and most likely the people to govern Britain. And he sort of asks these 2 gentlemen advice. Which of you, basically, which of you two should I go and name to the king as my replacement, my suggestion for replacement, to be approved presumably by Parliament and whatnot. And what do you think? And Churchill turns his back and looks out the window to make no comment, sort of forcing Halifax. Oh, it does say Lord Halifax, yes, down here. Halifax to sort of respond and sort of go, yeah, or whatever he says. I know it's recorded, but yeah, I guess I'll support Churchill or something like that. So it's almost literally a coin toss, not quite, but almost literally a coin toss whether Halifax succeeds Chamberlain, who's sick also, but yeah, or if it's Churchill. So you have somebody who is definitely a British patriot. The Germans, of course, think he's a potential collaborator. I don't think he's that. I really don't think he's that at all. But I would definitely see as somebody who, once the fall of France is there, who would potentially, maybe even likely, negotiate a peace settlement. That is the importance of this, historically speaking. Oh, and proper shells to do the bringing UK the future isn't such a bloody pain in the ass. Don't quite get that. OCB. So yeah, so this is the situation with what's going on. Okay, let's look at our logistics here. We're still not building enough motorcycles. We're still not building enough coastal artillery. I don't know where it's needed, and I don't know how important that'll be. So let's look. I'm pretty sure we have coastal artillery equipment here. Yes, coastal. Okay, I thought we had 2 already, but now we have 2 factories building it. And when I often say warfare is a political act, and all these battle stats and all these tanks and who wins what battles, yeah, they're important, obviously. But political decisions like that as to who is governing a country do matter considerably. Fall of Beijing, Beiping or Peking. Knowing that the age of the battleship was kind of over, is it best to build lots of carriers playing as the British in? Not necessarily. I might argue that the this, I guess, is British or is Japanese territory under this little Japanese puppet here. This is direct Japanese control. Okay. The era of battleship dominance is over. What you see is not, quite honestly, not carrier dominance, but aircraft dominance. So, what does Italy need aircraft carriers for? Oh, it could use them. I mean, in a functional, useful sense, aircraft carriers can be useful. And one thing that aircraft carriers sort of force nations to do is have a naval air force. That's one of the reasons why Graf Zeppelin, I believe, is never completed. And I believe in the modern days, post-World War II sense, Italy only has vertical lift carrier type aircraft transport, or on ships, if you will, is because the Italian Air Force is getting all the fixed wing aircraft. So what motivation does the Navy have to have a carrier if it's just going to be flying aircraft or Air Force aircraft off of it? And Goering, yeah, because Goering wasn't going to allow the Navy. See, the Royal Navy has its own Air Force. Japan, very much in his toy jet, talked about that there's both naval transport aircraft, naval, transport aircraft, and Army transport aircraft. Japan has two air forces, very much, and in very different ways, and they're using very different models of aircraft. Yes, Japan, or the U.S.'s naval air force is huge, but that's just because things are so huge. And the Army Air Corps was still nominally under the Army, though more and more independent as time is going on. And eventually, I guess somebody said in 1947, it becomes independent branch in the U.S. So you see the problems with not having a naval air force. Now, of course, Germany in World War I did have a naval air force as well as an Army Air Force. And I can think of Osterkamp, he was an ace, I believe an ace in World War I, but one of the rather good pilots, and a bit older because he's a World War I pilot era guy, but one of the Luftwaffe's leading, air commanders, if you will. Not young enough to be a fighter pilot, but leading those groups well. So Germany gives up its naval air arm, or doesn't recreate it after the Nazis come to power because of Goering. What you need is close cooperation between air and navy, and you need the idea that some aircraft are under the command of the Navy, meaning, we have this super important push for the Air Force to do. Okay, so these aircraft are under the control of the Navy. If the Navy wants to give them up to whatever the super important push, fine. If not, it goes, hey, we've got these things they call boats, or as Lum calls them, or ships out at sea that are floating around. They need aircraft protection right now. We don't care how important your bombing raids on somewhere in the fighter escorts are, because if we don't have aircraft protecting these ships right now, they could get sunk. So you need dedicated naval aircraft. Now, as we can see geographically, especially like once Italy takes a place like Greece, they can have all of the unsinkable aircraft carriers they sort of want. Aircraft carriers could be of use, practically positive use, but is it worth building them? The cost of building, with Italy so strapped for everything, I would say no. It should not build an aircraft carrier in, the World War II timeframe and leading up to it. It just shouldn't. At least not a big full one. I mean, if you want to convert a light cruiser or two to put on a fighter deck, and have a hangar below it that has 10 or 20 aircraft on board, okay, a little something might be useful and might be cost effective, but really I would say no. Now, playing as Britain, you're playing as a global power, though British fleets were not designed to stay at sea very long. American fleets were designed even before World War II, definitely by World War I, to go to sea and stay at sea for a long time, because the Americans were always looking at the Pacific, and we're definitely acquiring places like Hawaii and Guam. Is this Guam here? Yes, Guam here. And of course the Philippines for basing, but still with those bases, yes, but it's still a long ways. Where Britain has a global fleet, but is very much looking at protecting its trade. And yes, its trade does extend into the Pacific, but is always looking at having bases nearby, whether it's Hong Kong or Shanghai or Lyon, up until this time, bases out here, bases through India, bases all over Africa, bases out on little islands, bases out in the Caribbean, bases, up here. They got bases in Malta, bases in Gibraltar, bases in Egypt, bases in Cyprus. So their fleets are not designed to be sustainable and function a long time. They really have to work. In 1945, when Britain sort of insists upon it, Nimitz, who's running the naval operations in the Pacific for the Americans, goes, hey, yeah, they come to him, hey, yeah, do you want these British fleets showing up that would love to come and help you fight the Japanese? He goes, no, thank you. The Japanese still has a big fleet. Yeah, we know. No, thank you. We don't want the British. But basically, he gets forced by politics from the U.S. No, you will take the British. And so, yeah, okay, so it sort of goes, and I'm going to get the details wrong, sorry, because I'm just talking off the top of my head, because I read the Nimitz biography a few years ago now. Yeah, the British are looking like, yeah, we're going to come and help you and support you, and the Americans are going, yeah, we go out for like 90 to like, I don't know, 180 days out at sea, our whole fleet all at once out there. And the British are going, huh? What? Well, we need to go back into port about every, I don't know, 15 or 20 days. We can only be out at sea for, like at 15 or 20 days. The Americans are going, what, UCU? We're out, we don't go back to port that often. The British just weren't designed to go back, weren't designed to stay out there. So they really worked hard and actually cut back the size of the fleet that they were going to commit. This is after, well, maybe not after the VE Day, but this is as VE Day is approaching and the British Navy is going, we have all the Mediterranean coast functionally under our control. I mean, there may be still parts of Yugoslavia, and there's still British Navy playing around the Netherlands and the North Sea and whatnot here, but there's really not much for the British Navy to do anymore, so they want to do something for the war, so that's why they wanted to come out and fight in the Pacific and whatnot. And since there's no bases, because Singapore stays in Japanese hands, and the Philippines, even though once the U.S. takes them there, they're not set up to be bases, to really support much of that, and that's sort of MacArthur's show anyways. And when they do retake Guam, and their base, most of the stuff there is, they're dumping lots of supplies on shore on Guam, I know, but a lot of it is still just ships in port that are transferring, supply ships transferring stuff to naval operations. And they're operating way up here by this point. They're invading Okinawa. They've taken, Iwo and they're really pushing on Japan. And there's just no place for the British to sort of base out of. And so they really work hard to get their underway replenishment going on and whatever. The British Navy is just not designed to fight with long legs at sea. I mean, they can load up their ship with coal or oil or whatever and steam for a long ways and get somewhere, but that's different than operating, sailing back and forth around and feeding sailors for a long time, resupplying ammunition, dealing with maintenance issues at sea. They're just not trained to do that, and the Americans are, because they had needed to for the Pacific, as well as when they're like supporting out the Allies in World War I here. They were obviously working in ports, but they were still sort of long-legged and better trained for that viewpoint than the British were. So yeah, when you're doing that, you need carriers for your aircraft. But if you're just running aircraft around here, in these type of areas and around the Mediterranean, you don't need carriers, you just need aircraft. So battleships, their dominance is over, but their usefulness, and I would say usefulness to this day, I think it is a mistake that somebody like the U.S. Navy or the British Navy, and I know China is wanting to be a global power, but they can't do this, is I don't know why they don't build a few battleships. Because I understand why they've retired the World War II U.S. super battleships finally, but the idea of building an armored ship that has big guns on it, because big gun rounds cannot effectively be stopped from coming in, as far as I know. Meaning interceptor missiles aren't going to be able to cost effectively, as well as just operationally effectively, shoot them all out of the air to stop them coming in, where launched missiles either from aircraft or from ships can be stopped with intercepting missiles, as well as, you know, those CWIS, the phalanx systems and similar other things that shoot those down. And the idea that there are nuclear weapons out there, and some of them are designed to shoot at ships, that if you build a battleship that is, yeah, I know long-term effects of radiation, and there are medical mitigation to some of those things, depending on your dosage levels. But building ships that can take a lot of punishment and still be, at least for a time, operational. So a battleship, I think, would be a thing that they should revisit and do a modern one. You can do it stealthier, so it has a lower, not, you know, stealth ship, but lower radar impact, and, you know, by the angles of it, and just design the thing to really be good. So what I like to do, and I know this was a question and I'm getting there, because I'm normally playing us Germany and some, you know, supporting in Italy, is I like to have naval, you know, naval bombers and float planes and fighter escorts to base off of, to put in air operations against naval operations instead of building carriers. But I think battleships still have a role to play. You just need to make sure your side has naval air coverage. And even in game mechanic terms, it does seem that having some good battleships in there is a useful thing. That is why I am producing a few, or what? Okay, yeah, the Nelson class here. A couple of battleships that are just, I'm only building two, and I'm building an Ark Royal class carrier. I'm hoping to use, you know, naval air, some from carriers, but also from land base as well, to do that with a few, you know, battleships in our fleet. That is, so in real world terms and in game terms, I think battleships are appropriate and useful, but you're right, they no longer have, you know, naval warfare dominance. Now, okay, let's see. So in Southeast Asia, you can still rely on U.S. blowing it off. I don't know if we can in the game. Can you focus on Europe instead? Well, yeah, I don't know what the AI is going to do. We're going to find out as how far we play into it. I'm definitely going to focus on Europe, and I'm going to try to hold particularly a place like Singapore if I can. I'm not going to try to hold everywhere in the East. That's why they created integrated command. Yeah, but you see, integrated commands, the difference between a naval air arm and integrated commands is the commander of your integrated commands may decide that the air is more important somewhere else and gets pulled off of the naval use. But a carrier task force group, presuming it has, you know, aircraft there, it hasn't all been shot down or something, which sort of happened to the Japanese in that they had naval, you know, task force groups that basically had, for at least a while, no aircraft. I mean, they had a few that made it back from some of these events, but had a lot shot out. The commander of that task force truly controls the aircraft there and can go, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll fly a sortie or two for you, but I've got to keep back aircraft to protect my ships or whatever, and they can refuse to send all of their aircraft. So you need guys with Navy insignias owning, you know, owning aircraft, whether they're taking off from the land or taking off from the ship. So, but integration command is great in that you also have, whether it's the U.S. Army Air Corps or the Regia Aeronautica or whoever, coming in supporting the Navy at times You know, sometimes overwhelmingly, you know, when they're invading, you know, Crete or something like that. At other times, it's sort of like, oh yeah, we're fighting, you know, the RAF out here, but oh hey, yeah, we can put up you know, we spot some flying boats, or there's a convoy moving along and just some fighters patrolling around looking to see if there's submarines, because the water's sort of easy to see. You can see it is a bit deeper in some of these areas, and just by here you see some of the areas, there's shallow plains here, so it depends on where they are. But yeah, you can, you know, fly fighters over and actually look into the water very well and spot submarines down, according to some of the books I've read. So yeah, just even some flyers. Yeah, we could spare, you know, a fighter squadron or two to do that for, you know, a sortie or two. Yeah, and so integrating your commands to switch, because there may be at times your, whatever the naval air arm in Italy would have been called, Regia Marina Aeronautica? I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, we can fly, you know, we can spare a few of our fighters to, you know, battle the RAF for a few days, but it's not like a permanent assignment, and it's them deciding to give it up in coordination when they think they can spare it. So a naval air arm, whether it's a full and functionally it becomes a full air force during World War II. It's definitely pulled back today. I mean, the U.S. Navy does fly some fixed-wing aircraft that can only take off from land-based sources, but they're almost exclusively, you know, anti-submarine, long-range aircraft kind of things. But mostly it's, you know, the big air transport arm, you know, for supply is Air Force. Yeah, the Navy has some, but it's the Air Force. So it's not, they're not really running dual air forces. I wouldn't consider that. Now, of course, the U.S. Navy the naval air arm today is bigger than many nations' air forces, but then again, we are talking about 15 states put together here. So you know, but Japan is really running you know, dual air forces at the same time between the Navy and the Army. And, you know, so it's that kind of thing. So coordination is very useful, but you also need that. Use modern computer methods, cooperation between military branches. Yeah, again, it's who commands is important. Range battleships, guns is low, exposing it to rather high degree. Hello. Schwarzer? Sorry, I'm butchering that. Yes, battleships, and if we're talking modern use, battleships. I remember the U.S. battleships off of Beirut very well dominating the situation, basically after a while, with some militias wanting to like fire at the U.S. Marine compound there, deciding not to fire anymore at them because they kept getting bombarded by battleships. And it's the modern battleship can fire into the littoral zone, which is what, 24 miles in from the coast, and the majority of humanity or whatever lives in the littorals, lives coastally. Yeah, I know there's lots of people inland in China and India, and I was pointing at the wrong opposite ones when I was saying it, but still most of them are sort of littoral. So that's what the coastal region is sort of called, like 24 miles in. And they're they're, at least to the best of my knowledge, they're you can't stop a 16-inch shell from coming in. And even if you can, you know, intercept a few of them that somehow would divert their path coming in with a missile, yeah, a barrage of 9 of them all at once, yeah, I think they're getting through. So, and then of course you can mount on them and, you know, missiles. Tomahawk and other type missiles on them, the upgraded World War II battleships, the New Jersey and whatnot. They did have Tomahawk missiles, and for a while they were nukes. I don't know if they were always nukes stored on board them. So that they're nuclear cruise missile armed battleships. So you could do that again. Yeah, that could be very useful. And the U.S. can afford them. I don't know if China could afford them, but the U.S. could afford them. And all I'm thinking is like 4 to 6. Just sort of in that range. shadow scheme done. Very good. Okay, industrial effort. That's where I want to go instinctively, but let's look around. That unlocks spawn command. Coastal command. A lot of really good things. Let's encourage colonial leads. We want to get diplomatic relations, develop Canada. Really want to do that. Coerce Spain, fortify the Rock, Mediterranean Basin. Yeah, we'll do this. 49 days. And I also think a lot of the anti-shipping missiles out there are not really designed, because you look at like the Harpoon missiles, really designed to punch heavy armor that you would find in a battleship. They're designed to punch fairly light to no armor, you know, just metal holes that, you know, stop a bullet, but and so I think if things short of a nuke being fired at them, I think a lot of the missiles would find them a little difficult to penetrate. So yeah, that's sort of my opinion on them. I'm still an advocate for a superpower like the US, which is the only current superpower. There's other great powers, but the only superpower should have some battleships. Just so when we're, you know, deciding to deploy out here and deploying, yeah, carriers, which are great, just go, yeah, we've got this super battleship that's there with a lot of anti-missile technology. Another anti-submarine destroyer. There we go. Put those in serial production. I tried that with the failed the railguns with, yeah, faster flat trajectory can't be intercepted. Now I see they return back to conventional light cruisers. They're calling destroyers. Yeah, I don't know enough about those programs. I mean, I've seen some of the ships that they built. I don't know whether they are failed designs or were just meant to be experimental designs that they're not ready to put into serial production. I don't know. I just quite honestly don't know. But I do know that you look at, you know, by just doing various angles to the ships, which you can see in some of the more modern U.S. naval vessels. I'm not talking the experimental ones, but the more conventional ones. Just sort of angle things a bit better. You make them lower. I'm not saying no radar profile, but lower radar profile. And whether you're talking rail guns, which is not really what I'm talking about, but talking about just more advanced sea whizzes and those type of things mounted on them, as well as, I know it's like the Sea Wolf missile that the British have, or similar sorts of, you know, anti-missile missiles launched and, you know, mounted in the holes, you know, vertical launch tubes for incoming ballistic missile coverage. That, as well as part of, you know, dispersing some of that around to, you know, destroyers, whether you want to call them destroyers or cruisers or whatever, depending on their, you call them on their, based on their tonnage, or you call it based on their roles or whatever. But having a dispersed air defense network is good, but also having a few heavy concentration elements that are armored can also be good as part of the network to really try to stop incoming threats, both, you know, what we call aircraft, whether they're manned or unmanned, or as well as, I guess aircraft are things that launch other things now, because they may be manned aircraft or unmanned aircraft. compared to a missile coming in, which is obviously impacting in the target as opposed to launching other things. So dealing with aircraft coming in of one sort or another. Okay, well, still showing. When I come over here, it seems to be that we are building coastal artillery. Well, is there like a coastal artillery gun that's different? Because I get the equipment here. I don't think so. So maybe we're just slowly grinding down and I'm not noticing that. Okay. Motorcycles we're catching up to finally. And I know how important aircraft is going to be. So where are our Hawker, Hurricane? Let's do 2 more factories of those. One obviously coming online now. Okay, the Indian National Congress triumphs in provincial elections. Okay, so we got that done, I believe, there. So we can do Halifax. We'll do that. I know as we get closer to time, I'm thinking, well, we're almost in 38 now. Right fighter, fast bomber, twin engine, naval bombers. 3 bombers are probably not going to do. Hadley Page, medium and heavy naval bombers. Fort Brothers, I guess they're flying boat to Sutherland, yeah. Bristol bow fighters, yeah. Heavy naval bomber. Flying boat, naval bomber. I think that's probably going to be the one. I'm going to try to some degree, because we already have the Supermarine there for the fighters. I don't think I'm planning on doing a strategic bombing campaign of Germany. Don't think I'm planning on doing that. Not that I won't do some of that, but I'm looking at naval bombing here to be able to control. Don't know if we can do enough out of here. I'd love to be able to hold Singapore as a fortress and sort of hold in Burma here, and of course hold down in there. Okay, whatever. Italy storms out of the League of Nations. Okay. I guess we're letting these people retire. Well, so far, I don't know if it's because of our help, but the Spanish Republicans are still holding on here. So they're nationalists on the outskirts of Madrid. Anything? No, nothing more we could really do. Okay, fuel storage, good. Old Hong Kong. Those would be nice. Singapore strategy. Landward fortifications. Yeah, if we can get that, we might be able to hold. But we have presumably until late 41, presumably, to get some of that done. So we're gonna push down it, but not fast. "56 days. That looks so tempting. So so looking at mine laying cruiser. We'll do this. Okay, that should give us another, well, 8 days, another. Let's do one more here. We'll keep it up there, and let's do an artillery factory. So we can. Civilian works. Well, our war support is up considerably. Yep, we're all the way into 38 and we still haven't done some of these. Okay. Okay, we're in 38. We can do the Supermarine. We're just researching the Spitfire now, so 120 days. we can see about producing Spitfires. Yes, timing very good there. We'll put them in production. I don't know if we'll start a new production line, or I think I would rather keep the Hawker Hurricanes also in production just because they're there and working well. And okay, now we can come to the Cruiser Mark I A9 and start researching that, and then start also producing proper tanks. Fighter workshops, very good. Yeah, we could reduce no super factories needed. All right. Yeah, I was wanting to produce a few more things. Let's just to let you guys know, if you haven't already, you can follow me on Twitch, and of course hit the subscribe button on YouTube if any of you guys are new here. Friday I will be streaming Panzer Corps for Slytherin, and later in the day about 12:30 Pacific time, we'll be playing multiplayer Germany, and as well as other nations, Black Ice, Hearts of Iron 4, and yeah, that's the live stuff. And then of course next Sunday Saturday we'll be continuing this. So on Sunday tomorrow we'll be playing War Thunder. Love it if you guys want to show up and watch. You can even show up and play with us. At least I don't want to. I'll definitely kick some of I'll kick Arno for a mission or two if somebody new wants to show up and play. So yeah, if you want to do that, we would happy to have you play with us. That's rude, I know, but we'll kick you for a mission or two and let you guys, somebody else, play with us. I don't know. Let's ship designer Yarrow. We already have Vickers and Armstrong. Light destroyer torpedo attack. Am I overlooking at anti-max range depth charges? Like that. Well, we can't do that yet. Okay, January. I don't know. Then maybe we'll wait on it. Well, I think we're going to end this episode here. I want to thank you all so much for getting this far into it. See you next time for more hard.